So I'm here in the heart of Oxford, UK, with a evolutionary anthropologist who just gave a fascinating talk at the European Astrobiology Institute's Beacon 25 conference in Reykjavik, which I was privileged to attend. And we, by chance, our paths crossed here in Oxford, and we just did an interesting interview. And Kathleen Bryson from the Montfort University in Leicester, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I got the pronunciation correct. So what was the gist of your paper at Reykjavik?
So the gist of the paper is that there's a concept called convergent evolution, and that means that in similar environments you get often similar body types over many generations, because that's optimal for those environments. And I'll give you an example. In water, for example, you often see torpedo-shaped body types. You see water beetles, which have a similar body shape to an ichthyosaur, which has a similar body type to a dolphin, which has a similar body type to a seal. And so some of these are mammals, some of these are reptiles, one's an insect. But convergent means that it's analogous. It's also called analogous evolution sometimes too, which means that it's an analogy, so you see it in different things. So my paper, or rather the talk that I gave, was this idea that these same Darwinian evolutionary principles would likely also uphold on exoplanets, and that we would expect not necessarily the same body shapes, but the similar convergent behavior, which is also a result of environments.
So in the same way that physics is universal throughout the cosmos, you think that Darwinian evolution is also going to be universal?
Yeah, or maybe more the modern evolutionary synthesis building on Darwinian stuff. So that would be taking into account things like genetics, which he was either not aware of or chose to ignore at the time when he and Wallace developed not ideas or the discovery of natural selection. So yes, I do think that would be the case. Yeah.
And so what do you think, give us some ideas about examples of convergent evolution. You gave some interesting examples in your paper. Give us some examples of convergent evolution in which independently of each other, any given species, these traits emerge, or these qualities emerge. Give us a couple of examples.
Okay, so some really common convergent examples in organisms are eyes. You see it in insects. You see it in animals. You have, I was going to say that you also have tails are very frequently a convergent example. These are all body types, like I mentioned before. With
heads, you mentioned?
Heads are definitely convergent, and that's because it's useful. It's useful to have your sensory organ on direct facing.
And then even some means of excretion.
Yes, so the anus is also definitely. So fascinatingly, the anus is also convergent.
So everybody has one, no matter what species.
Not everyone, but it keeps reappearing. Another really great one, I think, is antifreeze, which you find in some kinds of fish, for example.
Is that right?
Yeah. So there's some really cool, and caffeine. To take a non-animal example, caffeine molecules are convergent, and they show up in tea and in coffee and in citrus fruits, which is maybe my own hypothesis. I don't know if anyone's ever tested it. Why we like orange juice in the morning also might give us an extra perk.
So we were just discussing, what this means for, our prospects for interstellar travel, for overcoming the problem of the speed of light. And what qualities an extraterrestrial intelligent civilization would have to be able to overcome this. And one trait that we both agreed that we don't have enough of is long-term planning. In other words, our lifespans are short. Today we're lucky if we live to be 100, and when our first ancestors evolved, they had even shorter lifespans,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, and so on this planet, we're amongst those who are better long-term planning, but that doesn't mean it's a lot. And as apes, we are probably at most evolved to consider the future in terms at most, possibly our grandchildren at that level. And so we don't really, it may be one of the issues we have with thinking about the environment, thinking about what things will be like in 200 years, because at that point in time, we won't have any descendants that will really matter too much to us. We're only 25% related to our own grandchildren, and each generation you get further removed. And so I think that might be an issue, but also just we weren't evolved to think about it. So in order to have
Long-term planning for interstellar missions, you have to think long-term.
Yeah, you do.
But here in Western society, there's no constituency for long-term space missions even, because the career span of a given astrophysicist or a given aerospace engineer is maybe 40 years at most.
Yeah.
And it has to be a cathedral building mentality, correct?
Yes, I absolutely agree. And you made that, and that was such a great point. I'm absolutely in agreement. And it also has to do with politics, which I think you mentioned as well. Particularly in the U.S., I'm originally from Alaska, so I'm American. We only have presidents for 4 years.
And Congress, they're being reelected every 2 years, and the budgets change every year.
Exactly. And so you don't have the consistency to follow through on this type of long-term planning that would make it, I guess, even possible to have the investment needed for proper space programs. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my impression.
But you actually posited during the interview that we perhaps, extraterrestrial intelligences may evolve with the same shortcomings that we have.
Yes, I absolutely think that they would also have some problems with long-term investment. Because I think that I firmly believe that whatever they look like, and I suspect it might not be much like us, that they will have convergent behavior to us, and so that they will have cooperation within their own group and kind of a certain nastiness often towards those who are not of their own group. And what that means also is that they would probably also prefer to invest in those who are closely related to them, or at least their friends who help them to survive. And so they would have I believe they would speculatively have our own short-sightedness. And also, it depends on how long they live, really, because with that dynamic, what you want is if you do favors for someone, for example, that you're not closely related to, then you want to have time for them to pay back the favor. And that's kind of implicit in social animals who live long.
And you see that here on Earth and among social species?
Yeah.
But it's kind of pseudo-altruism, as you said. Explain what you mean by pseudo-altruism.
Yeah, I definitely would call it pseudo-altruism, because the definition of altruism in evolutionary terms is that you pay an evolutionary cost. And so if I'm getting a benefit and you're getting a benefit, then it's a mutual interaction, and we're both gaining. And then the behavior can in theory be passed down. Let's say there's some genes I've got that predispose me to being cooperative. If I pay an evolutionary cost, then I don't reproduce, and I don't get to pass, or I don't reproduce as frequently, for example, and then I won't pass those down. So that's a really tricky, much debated subject, but it's generally, the scientific consensus is generally that group selection in that sense doesn't work. There might be some levels of group selection. So if you're doing it for the group, that can happen. People can be altruistic. It just means they're not going to be able to pass down those cooperative genes unless it benefits them. So I think that speculative extraterrestrials would also have some similar parameters.
But there are a lot of people within the scientific community, aside from those who like science fiction, who kind of disparage speculating about extraterrestrial intelligent life in a serious way. because they just say we just don't have enough data to make a scientific.
Yeah, I mean, biology is sometimes considered kind of like a soft science, but I don't feel that it is. I mean, biology is predicated on chemistry, which itself is rooted in physics, and so I think there is predictive biology. Yes.
So the biggest question is, just to sum up, the big questions are: do civilizations, if they're out there, who have developed intelligent life and spacefaring civilizations, what is their longevity? Do they kill themselves off early in their, or do they persist and have a cathedral building idea of working on great problems like overcoming the speed of light, for instance, so that they can become space voyagers? And we don't have the answers yet, right?
No, we don't. And I think the optimist in me thinks that maybe sometimes we do have that cathedral capacity, as you put it, which I like. And often, possibly more often, we do not.
Okay, Kathleen, thank you so much for your time
you.
today. Appreciate you're taking the time to speak to us.
Thank you.